Of course, the legislative session still underway down in Austin, and there's a lot going on, and it'll just continue to get a little more heated and a little busier down in Austin. Joining us right now to talk about the latest from the Texas Public Policy Foundation, the Vice President of Policy, Chuck DeVore, who joins us every Friday here on the show. Chuck, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good morning. Great to talk to you again, and your listeners again, Chad. And let's roll through what's going on.
Yeah. Well, as I understand it, it's becoming a little more clear as far as the budget goes. What some of this property tax relief may look like for the homeowners out here in Texas.
Well, yeah, there's a number of bills beginning to make their way through the Senate, and of course, regarding the overall amount of property tax relief, though, there's still obviously some tension, some debate between the Senate and the House. The House would like to, I think, see more business tax reduction. The Senate would like to see more property tax reduction. So let's talk about a couple of bills going on. One is by a freshman senator from the Houston area, Senator Betancourt. He's got two bills, one that would increase the homestead exemption for school property tax. It would double it from $15,000 to $30,000. That's SB 515 and SJR 28. Now, that's a constitutional amendment, so if it passes, the voters of the state have to approve it. So that's SB 515 and SJR 28. Another bill is very important for companies that do business in Texas, especially aerospace companies or any company that has expensive inventory that spends some time in the state, because if you have, let's say, a big jet engine and it sits in the state for longer than half a year, it ends up getting taxed as property, and that actually discourages businesses from locating here. It's called a Freeport exemption. Now that exemption time is 175 days before it gets taxed. Senator Betancourt would like to extend that to a full year before you tax it. So think of it as like inventory, like if you've got a big electric turbine or some expensive piece of equipment and you're a manufacturing facility and you're trying to keep some inventory, and if it sits on your lot for more than 175 days now, it gets taxed as real property.
Right.
And those bills are SB 516 and SJR 29, again, another constitutional amendment. So if it passes the Senate and the House, it's got to be voted on by the people of the state of Texas.
What is the opposition to that? What are we hearing, for those who say that, no, we need to keep it at 175 days, or those who were against even expanding it to that? What is the opposition all about?
Well, of course, it's all about money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you extend it to 365 days, there are certain jurisdictions that may have manufacturing facilities in their area that may see their tax revenue go down a bit. But in fact, what will end up happening is those manufacturing facilities may decide to expand, and
right.
they may see greater business activity occurring rather than simply moving the equipment or storing it out of state. I mean, the last thing you want to do is have tax laws force a company to ship expensive parts around by truck or rail just to avoid the tax implications of some $100,000 part sitting on a lot.
Right.
That's really not what property taxes are for. It's different if you've got some permanent piece of equipment that's installed in the factory and it's doing work and it's part of the industry there in the factory. But what we're talking about are large, expensive parts that spend a certain amount of their life in Texas before they move on to be sold somewhere else.
Makes sense to me.
Well, it does to me too.
I mean, it's just,
so in any event, there are other measures that would provide similar amounts of property tax relief to homeowners, as the Betancourt measure. This homestead exemption for school property tax, doubling it to $30,000 from $15,000, and so that's pretty much it on the property tax front in the Senate. Now, there's some very interesting property rights bills in the Senate that we are very much in favor of. And do we have time to talk about those property rights bills?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Well, the first one that is very intriguing and that we like is Senate Bill 474. That's 474 by Senator Kolkhorst. And this would make landowners eligible to be compensated for their attorney's fees in an eminent domain proceeding. So if the government tries to take your land through eminent domain, This makes the landowner eligible for attorney's fees if the final award for their property is more than 10% above what the government initially offered. So let's say you have a piece of property and you think it's worth $100,000, and the government comes in and offers $50,000 for your property. So the difference is $50,000, right? Well, you could easily accrue tens of thousands of dollars of attorney's fees right now fighting the government for only offering you $50,000. And let's say in the course of the fight we get the government to offer you $70,000 for that $100,000 piece of property. Well, your attorney's fees are going to end up being more than the difference that you ended up getting from the government. And then the government doesn't have to pay you your attorney's fees. Well, in this law, the government would have to make you whole and pay you for attorney's fees if they lowball you by more than 10%. So we're thinking that what this will do is make eminent domain proceedings a little more fair. Perhaps government will use it a little less frequently because they know they're going to have to offer close to fair market value or else risk paying attorney's fees.
This is almost a loser pay system for the government.
Absolutely, and we think it's a very important reform to prevent eminent domain abuse, because what ends up happening is government knows how expensive attorneys are, and they'll lowball property owners all the time, knowing that if you fight, you're going to spend more money on your attorney than you may get in the difference between what they offered you and what you think your land is worth. So another bill by Senator Schwartner, Dr. Schwartner, is SB 479. That's 479. And this would improve the ability of landowners to buy their property back, property that was once taken by eminent domain, if the government entity that took the property failed to use that property for its stated purpose. So let's say they take your property and they say they're going to build a road or build a hospital or something like that, and then several years later, the property's still sitting there, government still owns it, nothing happened. This allows the owner to try to get that piece of property back, and it changes the buyback rules. Right now, the buyback rules are very much in favor of the government. This would tilt the balance more back toward the property owners, so that if government takes your land through eminent domain and for a certain reason and doesn't use it for that reason, it increases the odds that that landowner can recover that property, in many cases property that's been in the family for generations.
Very good. And it sounds like there are, and obviously this is going to happen throughout the legislative process, but a lot of good bills out there that really pertain to private property rights, which is something that I know a lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans ran on, during their campaigns about protecting private property rights. Also, those who campaigned saying we're going to cut taxes as well. So it's good to see that some of the lawmakers keeping true to their word.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always good. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that these days with the engagement of citizenry through the Tea Party and through social media. It's a lot easier for average citizens to keep track of their lawmakers these days than, let's say, how it was 30 years ago.
Well, that's good for the citizens, bad for the lawmakers.
Right.
I guess for those down in Austin.
4 years.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to have to actually do what they said they were going to do. That
they
get voted out. I know. Hey, Chuck DeVore, Texas Public Policy Foundation. Tell folks just a little bit about the Texas Public Policy Foundation and some of the information they can find on y'all's website.
Well, that's great. Thank you for the opportunity. We're at texaspolicy.com, and what we are is we're a free market think tank here in Austin, Texas. We got about 40 employees, and we put out white papers, and we write opinion pieces, and we testify on legislation, and we try to encourage the legislature to honor liberty and free markets and individual responsibility, and try to help them make Texas better in our view. We think that liberty and prosperity are linked, and that the more freedom people have, the more prosperous society will be as a whole.
Absolutely. Chuck, appreciate your time, and you visit with us every Friday. We always appreciate it, and encourage people as well to go to texaspolicy.com for a lot of great information. It's a huge website, lots of different information on there for people to go through. As always, Chuck, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good one. That's Chuck DeVore, Texas Public Policy Foundation.